Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, and today we are going to be talking about my 2024 in terms of reading and some goals I have going forward in 2025. But mostly we're here to talk about my top favorite reads of the year. And this list was very hard to compile because I don't know about you guys, but like it was pretty hard for me to narrow down like a top favorite read of the year. I mean, I read a lot of great books this year, don't get me wrong, but like it was just hard to narrow it down to just one, like in order to compile a list. So I did the best I can, and I'm hoping I don't regret my decisions here. But we're also going to talk about an honorable mention and a disappointing read because just want to round out the year a little bit. And also there's dogs running around, so we're just gonna have to deal with it. Okay, so we're gonna start off with kind of a negative note. We're gonna talk about my most disappointing read of the year. I mean, there was kind of two, but I went with this one. I'll go ahead and mention another one. It was My Heart's a Chainsaw by Stephen Graham Jones. I was actually very excited to read this because I wanted to get into horror a little bit more, and that didn't go very well. I absolutely hated that book. The main character was insufferable. And also, I'm not going to go through any of the synopsises because I'm horrible at it. So if you want to know more about these books, just go look it up on Goodreads. But yeah, so My Heart's a Chainsaw was not good. I hated the plot. It was not what I was wanting out of it. Everyone kept telling me it was a slasher. A slasher where? Like, literally where? Like, there was no vibes of Scream or Halloween or Nightmare on Elm Street. Nothing like that. Like, those vibes were not there at all. And that's what I was really looking for. So that was by far, like, my most disappointing read of the year. But the one I want to talk about, though, is the Legacy series by Melissa K. Rorick. So I went through a Melissa K. Rorick spiral this year. I read her Lady of Darkness series, which I actually really enjoyed. I had some issues with it, but overall that series was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it immensely. So I was very excited to jump into this because this is a very dark fantasy romance, so check your trigger warnings. But this book, I gave 5 stars. I love this book. This first book is incredible, but where it lost me was in the sequel. I don't like where the story's going. I don't like the romantic development in particular. I don't know if this is a spoiler or not, but I'm going to go ahead and say it. It is an wide choose romance. I don't like reverse harem or wide choose. It's just not for me. So if that's something you're into, you will probably love this. But I'm not a fan of that. And so that's kind of where we were going. And yeah, it's not for me. But this first book is amazing. That's why it's so disappointing, is because like we started off so strong and then we just developed into something that I didn't care for. So that's unfortunate, but that's the way it is. And now my honorable mention is When the Moon Hatched by Sarah A. Parker. So I think when I was posting about this on Instagram a couple months ago, I said it was one of my favorite reads of the year. And it was. I'm talking about it. Like, this is a great book. And the writing is beautiful. I like the story. I like the characters. But I couldn't tell you what happened. And I know that's a me problem for sure. But in terms of enjoyment level, like, I don't exactly know what happened in this book and why we got to where we got. And maybe I'll feel a lot different when the sequel comes out in fall 2025. But like, I like this book a lot. I love this book, but I couldn't tell you what happened. And I know that's a me thing, but I wanted to talk about it because I did really like this book a lot. And so, yeah, When the Moon Hatched. All right, so now we're actually getting to my top 10 list. And we're starting off with a banger. And that's Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson. So I am going on a journey. 2025 is my Brandy Sandy year. I am going to be diving headfirst into the Cosmere. I'm actually halfway through the Mistborn trilogy right now, which you'll get my reactions to the second book in a vlog that's coming. But I actually started this book twice before I actually got to finish it. One thing I have come to terms with Brandon Sanderson is his books are very slow burn. Like, you don't get too much plot until maybe halfway through. The first half is usually all about world building and building these characters and just introducing you slowly to whatever he has planned for us, you know. And I absolutely loved this book. I ended up giving it, I think I gave it 4.5, but as I've sat with it a lot longer, I think I want to give it a 5 star. It made me cry. Like, the character development with one character in particular, like, really got me. And I think about this book a lot. And the romance in this is actually really, really well done. I felt a lot of things. And there's also like a budding romance that we don't get anything from. And I know Brandon is wanting to write a sequel to Warbreaker at some point, not anytime soon, but at some point he wants to come back to these characters. And I will be the first person in line to receive that book because I absolutely loved this book so much. And yeah, I'm just... Okay, we're not done with Brandon, so I'll just get on to the next one. I would not be able to talk about 2024 without talking about Mistborn. I just told you guys I'm halfway through the trilogy. I'm halfway through book 2. But oh my god, this first book was so good. I've gone on a journey with this book. I've started it 3 times within the last 2 years and soft DNF'd it because I just was not ready for it. Like I said, his books are slow burn, and this is no exception. But once it gets to a certain point, it's going 200 miles per hour. The action is nonstop. The development's nonstop. The characters are so intriguing. The magic system in this world is so cool. It's ingesting metals and able to have abilities based on those metals. Like, come on, that's so cool. And yeah, I'm so happy I loved it as much as I did because it would have been bad. I want to be on bandwagon so bad. If there's one thing you need to know about me is that if there is a bandwagon, I'm probably on it. It's just my personality. It's just the way I am. So I'm so happy that I'm on the Mistborn train. I love this book so much. And yeah, I don't know what else to say. I'm excited to keep going into the Cosmere. That's like my big reading goal of 2025 is to read the bulk of the Cosmere. The Way of Kings is well, it's not an anticipated release, but it's a very much anticipated read. It's like the book I'm most anticipating reading next year. So you'll probably be seeing Brandon Sanderson again on next year's list. We'll see how many books are on that list. I don't know, but I'm just head over heels in love with his Cosmere so far. So yeah, I love this. Speaking of bandwagons, another book that I absolutely loved. This is book number 8 on my list. I absolutely ate this up, and I also ate up the sequel. I love them both so much, and I'm basic. I don't give a fuck. And that's Powerless by Lauren Roberts. I love this book. I mean, it has all the stereotypical YA dystopian fantasy tropes from like Hunger Games, Red Queen, but those books are popular for a reason. In my opinion, people say this wasn't original. I felt like it was pretty original personally. I mean, there were a lot of influences, sure, and even Lauren Roberts said that she was influenced by those books. So it's not like she's not aware. And I know people want to crap on this, but I'm not one of them. I absolutely loved this book and this story. Kai and Peyton's romance is so good, especially in Reckless. Excuse me, enemies to lovers, back to enemies. Yes, absolutely. I'm excited for Fearless in 2025, which is the conclusion to this trilogy. I absolutely loved this plot. It was fun. It was familiar. I had a great time with it. So yeah, I love this book. Now, this next book was quite emotional for me. It was a long time coming. I finally finished the series that I've said is one of my favorites for a very, very, very long time. And I finally finished it. And that's A Skybound, the Story by Sabaa Tahir, which is the final book in her Ember in the Ashes series, which is a series I have a long history with. I read the first book in Ember in the Ashes when it released. I bought it the day it came out in 2015, devoured it, loved it, and have thought about these characters and this story ever since. And the conclusion actually came out in 2020 or maybe 2021, somewhere around there. And I put it off for so long, and I'm not sure why. But this book destroyed me. I think she wrapped the story up very nicely. It was hard to say goodbye to these characters because I had been with them for so long. And there was one romance in here that just ripped my heart out. And Salba does that to you. This series is very painful. Not gonna lie, it hurts a lot. But I love books that make me feel, and this series is just very smart, very action-packed, very romantic, and very relevant now, especially in the political climate that we're in around the world. It's just very relevant, and if you want something that's very plot-driven, very character-driven, like very equal amounts of plot and character, give this series a go. It is so wonderful. And I can't wait to reread it. I'm excited to read her Air duology. Air came out this year, which is set in this world. But I'm very excited to read those books because I heard they're just as painful. So we're going to go on a journey, but you need to read this series first. It's fantastic. Now, if you had asked me a year ago whether or not I was even going to read this series, I probably would have said no. But then I read this series, and I had a lot of mixed reactions to it. Mostly were positive up until the third book. But it's Nightban by Alex Astor. But this book, I have no words. Grim. This book is so romantic. It is so painful. It's just okay. So this is book 2 in the Lightlark saga. Yeah. And I have a reading vlog that's spoiler free of me reading this whole series, so I'll link that down below. But I liked book 1 a lot. Ate this book up in one day. I love this book so much. It's a very grim forward book. Who is my favorite character of this series? And then book 3, Grim's still great in book 3, but book 3 is kind of like where the plot's kind of just like nosediving pretty hard. I'm still going to continue the series, but I have very low expectations for book 4. But it's worth, like, reading the series is worth it to read this book. Like, trust me. Like, if you're a romantic person who loves yearning and just pain, read this book. It's YA, but it's a very spicy YA. Like, I feel like it's more new adult more than anything. But I love this book. I think about it quite a bit. And I just want all the good things for Grim. I do. He's morally gray, but we like our morally gray characters, don't we? Now, the rest of these are absolute bangers. Like, I don't have any negative things to say about any of these next books. Well, we'll get to that book. But the Book of Azrael by Emervie Nicole became my personality this year. I read this first book back in April and was very pleasantly surprised by how much I loved it. And then I read Throne of Broken Gods, which is book 2 in the Gods and Monsters series last month. I do have a vlog of me reading that. So I'll link that down below. But this book is just so fantastic. It's an enemies to lovers, back to enemies, cinnamon roll, morally gray, mommy. Just everything you could possibly want in a fantasy romance is in this book. You have mystery, you have romance, like I said. You have a very, very interesting world. It's an urban fantasy, and Amber does an expert job of getting you invested with these characters in this story. Book 2 is very painful. The cliffhangers in this series is crazy. I have not read book 3 yet, The Daughter of the Cursed Queen, but that's one of my next reads within the beginning of 2025. But I absolutely love this book. These characters mean so much to me. I want the best for them, and I know Amber's going to put them through so much turmoil. And I'm not here for it. I am, but I'm not, you know? If you know what I mean. Okay, so this series I was very excited to have started this year because I've been wanting to read them for a long time. I haven't finished it yet, which is insane to me, but I did read 3 of the books in the series, and one of the books is on this list, obviously. And that's the Plated Prisoner series. But I want to talk about Gleam in particular, because this is a King Midas retelling fantasy romance, and the love interest in this series is everything. Like, I can't talk about it. But I really like our main character, Arin. She goes through a lot. And this is a very dark series, so please check your trigger warnings if you're gonna get into it. But I devoured this book. It's a chunky boy. I mean, granted, like, the text is pretty tiny, but like, I went through this in a day, maybe a day and a half, and the characters are so good, and you care a lot about them, and the yearning, the tension is just beautiful, and Raymond Kennedy is just so good at weaving all these stories together, and I'm very excited to see where the story goes. There's a side couple that I know I'm gonna love, and I'm very excited to get to them because I haven't read any of them yet. So that's another 2025 goal, is to finish Plated Prisoner, because I absolutely loved these books that I read, and this book is just so good. Oh my god. So yeah, if you haven't read this series, read it. It's so good. Okay, so I feel like this is gonna be a little controversial because this is a top 3 read for me. And it's not that I didn't have issues with this book, because I did. But to me, like, the issues really didn't matter to me because the book hit me so hard, and I do have a reading vlog of me reading this, so you can see how hard it hit me. And I'm also a little biased. I'm trying not to be, but it's hard. But I could not make this list without mentioning House of Flame and Shadow by Sarah J. Maas. We don't have to spend too much time on this, but like, I love this book so much. It has issues, like I said. Like, I feel like you know what? I don't want to spoil anything, so we're not going to talk too much about this. But like, I really enjoyed finishing this arc of Crescent City, because we are going to get more Crescent City books. Hunt and Bryce's story was everything to me. Rune's story in particular is my favorite at Crescent City. I love him and his arc, and this book was painful in a lot of ways. And it also, like, really made me happy in a lot of ways. So yeah, I mean, what can I say? It's a Sarah J. Maas book. I love Sarah J. Maas, obviously. But yeah, I'm sorry, I loved it. It has problems, for sure, but I loved it. And I will not apologize for that either. Okay, so book number 2 is kind of a spoiler for my upcoming vlog, but I needed to make this list, and I would feel very stupid if I made this video and did not talk about this book. And that's Neverkeep by Caroline Peckham and Susan Valenti, the authors of Zodiac Academy. And as I said many times before, Zodiac Academy is one of my favorite series of all time. Love those books. Love the emotional trauma I get from those books. And this is the first book in a new series that's set in the Solaria world, I believe. Like, that isn't exactly clear to me, but we had the same, like, vibes. And I'd go more into this book in my upcoming Christmas vlog, but this book is darker and grittier than Zodiac Academy. I mean, Zodiac Academy gets dark and gritty, 1000%. But there's just an air to this that I absolutely just vibed with. And the characters are just so different than from our Zodiac Academy characters. And I feel like it's very well written. I know they get a lot of criticism for not writing very well, I mean, it's writing subjective to me, and I absolutely ate this shit up. Loved it. More trauma at the end. I don't know where we're gonna go from here. I finished this yesterday. I'm still thinking about it, and I'm still like, how did we get here? And the weird thing is about this series in particular is like we don't have a ton of character interactions. Like if you compare it to the first Zodiac Academy book, there's character interactions all over the place in that book. That's not really the case here. Like obviously we have character interactions, but they're very far between. And once we get them, they're great. And both of our love interests in this series, I don't know how we're going to redeem them. I don't. I would have said the same thing. Like, if you thought you had issues with, like, the love interest in Zodiac Academy, I don't know what you're going to think about this. I really don't. We have toxic of enemies to enemies. Like, I don't know how we're going to get past this. I don't. I genuinely don't. We have Echo Fort Book 2 coming out in April, and other than Onyx Storm, it is my most anticipated book of the year. I am just going to eat it up. I love the Twisted Sisters so much. All their books I've read are like bangers. I mean, Zodiac Academy 8, I didn't really love. I mean, I love it for being Zodiac Academy, but it didn't really do much for me other than that. But this, oh my God. I'm still reeling about this book. And I need everyone to read it. You don't have to read Zodiac Academy to read this. It's a very separate world. Well, it's not a separate world, but they don't have no crossover is what I'm trying to say. I need everyone to go read this book so you can talk to me about it because I'm still reeling. And I don't know how we're going to get past this. Now, I think a lot of you are going to be shocked by the placement of this book for being my favorite read of the year. Neverkeep was pretty close, but it's so new and so fresh to me that I feel more comfortable putting it at number 2 for now. But yeah, I mean, it's a very popular answer, so maybe it won't be that surprising, but Quicksilver by Callie Hart was my favorite read of the year. And if you just follow me on YouTube, you would have seen me read this book in a vlog a couple of months ago and say it was my most disappointing read of the year. So I actually reread this book because I read that book at the wrong time. I was not in the mood for it. Didn't want to read it. And I did not have a good reading experience with it. So I gave it 3 stars because I was not impressed by it. But then I was thinking about it and I was like, no, I should have loved that book. I should have. Once again, I have no standards when it comes to books. If I vibe, if I enjoy the story, if I enjoy the characters, I'm going to love it. I don't care if it's an unpopular opinion. But this book bothered me because it was like, I should have loved that book. So I gave myself some distance and then the audiobook came out. Now the audiobook is incredible. It's dual narration. So anytime a woman's speaking, we have a woman narrator. Anytime we have a male speaking, we have a male narrator. And it's so good. It's, I forget his name. I'll put it on the screen, but it's the same guy who voices Rhysand in the Akatar graphic audios, and his voice is great. And I believe he also does the audiobooks for The Play to Prisoner, which I haven't listened to. I've been reading those physically. But yeah, this book is so good. And we're getting a Netflix movie of this, and this is going to be an awesome movie. I'm so excited. And I actually really like the story. Like, I think a lot of people DNF'd it early on, and the beginning is rough. I'm not going to deny that, because the second time around, I thought it was rough. But once you get into the meat of the story, and you really get to see more character interactions and the romantic development, and then the plot development, especially the cliffhanger at this is insane. And it just did something to me. I absolutely loved it. I think about it constantly. I'm still thinking about it, and I will be very much anticipating book 2 next year, and very excited for any movie news that's coming. So yeah, this is my favorite read of the year. Who's shocked? So before we wrap this video up, I kind of just wanted to talk about like some reading goals I have for 2025. This is actually my best reading year I've ever had. I read 61 books, which is a record for me. It's the most books I've ever read in a year. And it was a good year reading wise. I had some duds like everyone else. But I read a lot of great things, obviously. But I am bringing my reading total of 2025 down to 30 because I am diving headfirst into the Cosmere. Like I was talking about earlier on in this video. It's time. I just know I'm going to love it. It's a lot. I think there's almost 20 books in the Cosmere right now, and there are more coming. I'm very excited to read the Stormlight Archive. I'm very excited to read the rest of Mistborn. I'm very excited to read the Secret Projects. Brandon Sanderson is like just the theme of 2025. So that's like my big one. But also, I just want to read what I want to read. I do that now, but like I always feel pressured to pick up certain books because I want to be in the know on the trends that are happening. Like, followers and stuff isn't everything. Like, I do this stuff because I enjoy it, but I do let the pressure of being on booktube and bookstagram, I do let that pressure take over, and it does get to me sometimes. So I'm gonna try my hardest not to take this so seriously. Like, I make videos when I feel like making them. I post when I feel like posting. And I don't have an aesthetic. Like, this is not cute. But I have to work with what I have. So it's hard, but we're doing it. I do want to get into more contemporary romance next year. Like, not a ton, because like I read Elsie Silver for the first time this year and loved it. I only read the first Chestnut Springs books, but I absolutely loved it. And I will be looking forward to reading the rest of Chestnut Springs next year. And what else do I have? I mean, I have other personal goals, but I don't need to talk about them here. If you're curious, I can make a post on Instagram or whatever. But just have fun, vibe, and don't take myself too seriously, because at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter. Like, my feelings on books are mine alone, and it's not like I have a giant following anyway. So I make these videos for me so I can look back on my experiences with some of these books, and it's just fun to look at. So anyway, I guess that's it. Thank you guys for watching this video. Let me know down below what your favorite books were this year. Do we have any in common? And what are your reading plans for next year? I'm very curious to know. You can follow me on my Instagram. I'll put it somewhere on the screen. And I will see you guys next time. Bye.